إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين أما بعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Insha'Allah ta'ala, we continue with the arkan of the salah, and we are going to now discuss with you very briefly about getting to the masjid and walking towards the prayer, which will take us to standing up in the salah, the takbiratul ihram. We have done Surah Al-Fatiha and discussed its rulings, and then we will go straight to the bowing and the ruku' and standing up and things like that. So, walking to the salah. This actually is one of the greatest acts of worship when it comes to the prayer, is to actually walk to the salah. It's so great that there's a specific hadith that mentions that every step, or likulli khutwatin, every step that you take, there is a reward for each step. And the Prophet ﷺ told the companions who were going to ride their horses to pray, who were going to ride their horses to the prayer, so they were using some other mode of transportation, not to do so, but rather they should come to the masjid by walking, because each step towards the masjid is always in your favor when it comes to good deeds. And the Prophet ﷺ mentions as the following: إن أحدكم إذا توضأ فأحسن الوضوء وأتى المسجد لا يريد إلا الصلاة لم يخطئ خطوة إلا رفعه الله بها درجة وحط عنه خطيئة حتى يدخل المسجد. The Prophet ﷺ mentions the following: that verily, without a doubt, if one of you does his wudu properly, فَأَحْسَنَ الْوُضُوء, so they do a perfect wudu, وَأَتَى الْمَسْجِدِ, and then they come to the masjid, and they do it for no other reason except for the prayer itself. That's the whole reason why they're coming. It's just for the salah. Notice the wording of the hadith. You're not coming for just a class, you're not coming for anything. It's only salah. Now, if you come for all of the other things, you come for a conference, a lecture, and that sort of thing, then insha'Allah, this hadith also applies to that. But it's specifically now going to address the person who's coming only for the salah. And it mentions, he will not take a single step except that by it Allah Azza wa Jal will raise him one level and remove a sin from him until he enters the masjid. Hadith in Bukhari. So Allah Azza wa Jal will raise his honor and decrease his sins. So the question here is, some people have said that if you drive a car, then every time the wheel turns one circulation, that's like one step. So imagine how the car is turning so how many steps are going by. None of this has any evidence. It's an invalid qiyas in and of itself. So there's no comparison to this. You physically have to be able to walk and feel that motion of walking. So let me tell you what some people do, which is very clever. And mashallah, it shows their eagerness in wanting this reward. I remember one brother I used to pray with all the time. He used to park his car in the parking lot of the masjid, and he would park all the way at the end. All the way at the end of the parking. So I'm like, why do you do that? And then he mentioned to me about this hadith. So I was like, MashaAllah, that's amazing. So what I did is I parked my car in the neighbor's parking spot. So now we start competing with each other. So he saw that and he's like, are you doing that because of the same hadith? And I'm like, yeah. So what he started to do is, he parked his car in the neighbor's spot, and then he, instead of walking straight towards the door, he started zigzagging his way towards the door. So he made the route and the walking even longer, and he started going back and forth. So I said, okay, there's no way to top this. So I decided to park my car farther down the street and start walking back. So he saw that as well, and he took it one step further, and mashallah, his iman was stronger than mine. I couldn't compete after that. There was a mall maybe about 2 blocks down the road. He parked his car there and started walking to the masjid. And he did this just simply because of the reward. So you see, when you do those simple little things, you know, subhanAllah, Allah Azza wa Jal elevates you when you come to the salah. This is also one of the ways to increase our chances that our salah is accepted by Allah Azza wa Jal as well. Is to take advantage of these things. So sometimes when you do come to the masjid, you may want to reconsider looking for the closest spot to the door, because insha'Allah, for every step that you take, Allah will just elevate you. You will remove sins, and Allah Azza wa Jal will honor you with this. Now, with walking, there are also etiquettes. You also have manners in how you do this. Some people like to rush to the masjid, some people like to run to catch the rak'ah, all of these things. So there is an etiquette of how to do this. And as a result, the Prophet ﷺ told us to maintain the best composure when we are walking and not to hurry. The Prophet ﷺ mentions, إِذَا سَمِعْتُمُ الْإِقَامَ فَامْشُوا إِلَى الصَّلَاةِ. Whenever you hear the iqamah, the word is famshu, from amshi, yamshi, masha yamshi, which means to just walk. Don't rush to go to the salah. وَعَلَيْكُمْ بِالسَّكِينَةِ وَالْوِقَارِ. And what I order you to do is to walk to the prayer in peace and tranquility. So you know how you got to feel when you do this? You got to be very relaxed. Yeah, sure, the imam may have started the salah. That is not a reason. That is not a reason for you to rush yourself to the prayer. And look what the Prophet ﷺ says, وَلَا تَسْرَعُوا. And don't hurry or hasten or rush to the prayer. فَمَا أَدْرَكْتُمْ فَصَلُّوا. Whatever you miss or whatever you are able to catch of the prayer, then by all means pray. وَمَا فَاتَكُمْ فَأَتِمُّوا. Then whatever you miss of the salah, don't worry about it. You can still make it up. And a lot of people, this is an issue here that a lot of brothers and sisters, they do this. They'll run to the masjid, they'll run inside the musalla. Some of you probably hear it. You know, sometimes you might be praying and then you hear the footsteps coming behind you whilst you're standing, and you have the khushu, and all you hear is and you hear somebody just running inside the musalla. Well, this is what we're talking about. It defeats the whole preparation for the salah. Now, why is this so important? Imagine when you run from here to like the store. When you get inside the store, what are you doing? You're only focused on gathering yourself, catching your breath one more time. That's all you're focused about. You're only focused about getting yourself, your body calm once again. And the Prophet ﷺ is telling you that's how you're supposed to be in the salah from the very beginning. That's not something you should be doing within the salah itself. So there's a beautiful wisdom behind this. Another etiquette of how we walk is that the Prophet ﷺ also mentions that do not cross between your fingers, and the Prophet ﷺ forbade one of the companions to do this. What do we mean when we say cross between your fingers? It's like this. So try to avoid this, especially on Yawmul Jum'ah before the khutbah. This is actually one of the disliked acts or etiquettes before the Jum'ah khutbah. The Prophet ﷺ stopped a companion by the name of Ka'b ibn Ujra radiyallahu an, and he told them not to do this because this was a method of how some of the mushrikun used to worship some of their gods during that time. So to stay away from that. But it's an etiquette. If you happen to do this and you're waiting for the salah and so on, you're not sinful in the sight of Allah. However, it goes against the perfection of the etiquettes of a Muslim, especially when it comes to the prayer. Then the Prophet ﷺ continues, a third etiquette, when coming out of the house to walk to the masjid, which we talked about. However, this is the most beautiful part about walking to the masjid, is the dua. The dua that you say, this is one of the most beautiful duas, that you ask Allah, Allahumma ij'al fi qalbi noora. Oh Allah, place light in my heart. Wa fi lisani noora. And on my tongue, nur, light. وَاجْعَلْ فِي سَمْعِي نُورًا, and place within my hearing, my ears, place light in it. وَاجْعَلْ فِي بَصَرِي نُورًا, and place within my eyes نُورًا, light. وَاجْعَلْ فِي خَلْفِي نُورًا, and place behind me light. وَاجْعَلْ فِي أَمَامِي نُورًا, and place in front of me light. وَاجْعَلْ مِنْ فَوْقِ نُورًا وَمِنْ تَحْتِ نُورًا, place above me light and place below me light. اللهم أعطيني نورا, oh Allah, just give me light. This dua is perfect for the salah. A person who prays, Allah Azza wa Jal places nur in their life, places nur in their bodies. Physically, when somebody prays, they become very beautiful. As a matter of fact, just recently there was an article that was released about the prayer and the beard. And this was written by a non-Muslim. And it mentioned there that one of the medical benefits behind the salah, behind prayer, behind going and prostrating so many times in a day, it actually causes the body to release certain gases and certain elements that it needs to as part of its function, as part of the mechanisms of the body for it to flow, the bloodstream to flow right, just to generally maintain a healthy body. The sujood is actually assisting and helping and improving this process. This here, some of the scholars also said that the sujood also eliminates headaches and also can prevent certain ailments and cancers and sicknesses from building up within the brain. When it comes to the beard, one thing was very interesting for me. Facial hair keeps an individual looking younger. So you don't have to spend your time in Shoppers Drug Mart and just try to find all these different things just to keep a healthy skin. Just simply have a beard on the face. And wallahi, you know, when you read things like this, you know what it should do for you? You should start to think about the ulama right away. Think about the shuyukh like such as, you know, Shaykh Uthaymeen rahimahullah. And just think about at his age and how old he was. All gray, very large beard, but his face itself was so clean, looked so healthy. Even in the last moments of his life, I mean, when you look at some of his videos, you see just a very nice, clean, well-kept skin that he has. And some of the ulama said this is one of the medical benefits behind growing a beard. And it's very true, because when you look at people who do shave off their beards, after a certain time, you'll find that their skin starts to sag. And you'll find that the skin starts to become very rough. And it becomes very difficult to handle. And even, you know, for the wife, if she wants to kind of rub the husband's face like this, it becomes very rough. So all of these things are eliminated, and it brings a sense of nice tenderness, a nice beauty to the skin as well. This is also one of the blessings of the beard. If this is not something to influence and to encourage about the beauty of Islam, I don't know what else is left for us to see that. Another etiquette when it comes to walking is that when the person he enters the masjid, he should enter with his right foot. And this was also part of the guidance of the Prophet ﷺ, that you enter the masjid in the right foot. Some of the ulama have a difference of opinion. What exactly is this hadith referring to? Is it referring to the musalla area here, that you should enter this part in the right foot? Or is it referring to the actual front doors, that you should enter with the right foot from that point? Majority of ulama say it's the hadith, the answer to this question is within the hadith. The Prophet ﷺ uses the word masjid in the hadith. He doesn't say musalla, he says masjid. So this is a very general term. When you use the term masjid, you're not only talking about the musalla, but rather you are talking about everything that is attached and part of that musalla. So for example, a lot of people ask this question: if I don't come into the prayer area, do I still have to pray Tahiyyatul Masjid if I'm upstairs in the classroom or if I'm somewhere else? Do I still have to do that? So what is the answer? The Prophet ﷺ says, don't sit down in the masjid until you pray rak'atayn. So what's the word that he uses? He uses masjid. So it's a general term that even if you enter this premises, you enter this building, you go into a classroom, you're still required, insha'Allah, to pray 2 rak'ats. you should still try to do this. Sometimes when I don't come straight into the musalla area here, I'll do the 2 rak'ats right in my office, just to at least accomplish and fulfill this hadith. So you want to also make sure that you do that. Same idea applies to when you're entering with the right foot. Now obviously if you enter in the masjid with the left foot, according to the ijma' on this particular issue, a person is not sinful for doing that. This once again is a very strong and encouraged etiquette that a person should try to follow. Another etiquette when it comes to the walking as well is upon entering the mosque or the masjid, the prayer has been established. So salah began. Then do not pray anything other than the wajib or the fard prayer itself. In other words, what this is talking about is, if the jama'ah already started, don't come in here and start to pray like 2 rak'ats and then pray your tahiyyat al-masjid while the salah is already begun. Because obviously the most beautiful and most beloved act to Allah Azza wa Jal is the fard act. And if it's started already, then you want to make sure that you take part in that first, and then you can leave the sunnah acts for later. The Prophet ﷺ mentions, if the prayer has started, then there is no prayer except the obligatory one. This is a hadith in Sahih Muslim. If the salah had already started, then there is no prayer except that prayer that's begun. This is extremely important. So this automatically tells you what you need to do and what your perspective is. A couple questions now tend to happen here. What if I made an intention to come to the masjid on time for salah, and I got stuck in traffic, and I didn't get a chance to pray my sunnah prayers? Because obviously you know when you pray all your sunnah, the Prophet ﷺ mentions the reward for a person who prays all their sunnah is Allah Azza wa Jal bunya baytan fil jannah, bunya lahu baytan fil jannah. Allah Azza wa Jal will build for him a mansion in paradise. So what happens if you got stuck in traffic and you missed out on that opportunity to pray the 2 rak'ats or the 4 rak'ats or whatever before that act of worship? What do? Here, according to the vast majority of ulama, this is a circumstance where you don't have any control. And so the ajr for praying those sunnah prayers is given to you. Because why? Your intention is to be there on time, but a barrier and a circumstance that you can't control has come in front of you. And this is based on a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, that for the mu'min, when they do make an intention to perform an act, and for some reason they couldn't get to perform that act, Allah Azza wa Jal rewards them for that intention. But if the mu'min was able to make the intention and he's also able to perform the act, then his reward is doubled for that act of worship as well. So this is actually one of the most beautiful incentives that we have in our religion as well. In addition to that, upon entering the masjid, a person should also say the dua. And of course the dua is Bismillah wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulillah Allahumma iftah li abwab rahmatik. This again, so you're saying Bismillah and then you send peace and blessings to the Prophet ﷺ, and then you say Allahumma iftah li, oh Allah, open for me abwab rahmatik, all the doors of your mercy. All the doors of your mercy. You see the masjid is like your battery for your iman. So this is the place where you come to recharge yourself all the time. A masjid is not a place of just prayer. It's not a place where you just come and you meet Muslims and you leave. A masjid is a part of your lifestyle. It's a part of your everyday routine. It's a part of how you live as a Muslim in this world. That's why it is highly, highly encouraged. If you don't live close to a masjid in whatever area that you're from, then wallahi you have lost an enormous amount of khair. Take it from my own example. There was once upon a time I lived very far from a masjid. It was perhaps one of the worst years of my life as a Muslim. It's just simply because you're hungry for the masjid. You're hungry for the salah with the jama'ah. You're hungry to get those extra rewards. You're hungry because you're young and you want to put that effort to accumulate on your scale. But the problem is you can't drive, you're too young, you don't know where the masjid is, or it's just too far. So one of the greatest faults that you might have in a lifestyle is that you live far away from the masjid. So here, a person who does come to the masjid also should try to perform and say this dua as well. Then there are also other different types of dua that can be said. Last etiquette before we move forward is that the person should pray the 2 rak'ats tahiyatul masjid. It is the greeting prayer, and of course this is based on a hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam in Bukhari wa Muslim. Let's look into the pillars of the prayer now. Before we discuss this, the first few pillars, we want to just make sure that we define exactly what is a rukn or a pillar in the religion. A pillar is something that without it, that act of worship is nullified. So the pillar of salah is to say Allahu Akbar. In other words, if you don't say Allahu Akbar when you start the prayer, then the prayer itself is nullified. So that's what a rukn is. Without it, that act of worship is done. So in Islam, we have 5 pillars. So without all 5 pillars, no one can be Muslim. So no one can say that I believe in Allah, I will pray 5 times a day, I will give my zakat, but when it comes to Ramadan, I don't know about that. I don't think I may fast in Ramadan, but I will make the Hajj. Is this person Muslim? No. They will never be counted as Muslim unless they take all. You can't just take a little bit and leave a little bit. You must take the entire package. So that's what a pillar is. So we're going to look at approximately 12 pillars of the salah. Without it, the salah is automatically, by default, it is nullified. Number 1, Allah Azza wa Jal says, standing up, وَقُومُوا لِلَّهِ قَانِتِينَ, and stand up for Allah Azza wa Jal, or to Allah Azza wa Jal, qaniteen. Qaniteen literally means attentiveness. So you stand up but you're attentive. Because imagine, you're standing in front of Allah at this point. You're standing in front of your Creator. It's only you and Him now. This act of worship, nobody helps you with it anymore. So it's just between you and Him. So Allah now says, stand up for Him attentively. Now standing up, of course, this is of course for a person who is able to do so. Allah Azza wa Jal says in Surah Ali Imran, الَّذِينَ يَذْكُرُونَ اللَّهَ قِيَامًا وَقُعُودًا وَعَلَى جُنُوبِهِمْ. So 3 levels Allah mentions when it comes to a person and how they worship Allah. The primary is that you stand up for prayer. According to majority of madhahib, a person is not permitted to make the choice of coming to the prayer and decide, you know what, I'm feeling a bit tired, so I'm just going to pray sitting down. I'm just going to grab a chair and relax and just enjoy the salah that way. This is a very, very disliked thing to do. According to some scholars, the salah is nullified if you're sitting down for prayer and you have the ability to stand up for that salah. You have the ability to do it, but you just chose not to out of laziness. Some of the ulama, including Sheikh bin Baz and others, say you must repeat the entire salah. This doesn't count. So that's how strict it is. And this is why, because Allah Azza wa Jal, the first choice that He gives us is the person who remembers Allah should start off qiyaman wa qu'udan. The first thing they should do is they should do it whilst standing. So that's our primary goal. Now what happens if you cannot do that? You're not able to for whatever reason. Then the next stage is to do it sitting down. How do you pray sitting down? Praying sitting down is very tricky if you don't know what you're doing. And there is a step-by-step method on how to pray when you do this in the salah. So let's demonstrate. You want to be my demonstrate person? You want to be? Oh, you're happy, come. Okay. So just so that the sisters can see what we're doing, you sit here in the front and just pretend you're in tashahhud, okay? So just pretend you're in tashahhud. So just sit down like you're going to finish up your salah. Yeah, exactly, perfect. So now sit down comfortably. Sit down comfortably. No, just like that. Go back the way you were and sit down on your feet comfortably. Yeah, very good. This is how the prayer should look, how it starts off. Some people cross their legs. This becomes invalid. It doesn't even count as an actual sitting position in the Sharia when it comes to the salah. So how do you start off a sitting position or a prayer? So you'll do your takbir. So just, raise your hands and pretend you're going to pray. So, no, pretend you're going to pray. So, and fold your hands. Good. So, prayer starts off this way. Now, when it comes time for the ruku', what do? You're going to place your hands on your knees. So, place one hand on your knee. Place the next hand on your knee. Now, lean forward just a little. Some ulama say that the way you measure yourself, or the way you know how to do this, is the front of your head should line up with your knees or your hands. So it should look at least perfect or somewhat even. That's counted as a ruku'. And when you go down to this position, you're in your ruku' now. Now you want to go back into that standing position. All you're going to do is you're just going to lean back. And then it comes time for the sujood. Now the sujood, obviously, you're going to go in and do a regular sujood. Now if you can't do that, just because of whatever reason, so how do you go down for sujood without touching the ground? This is what the ulama advises. Now you're going to stay right there. What I'm doing here is that the ulama, they advise that the entire head should be ahead of the palm or the hand area. So what you're doing is you're increasing that method and trying to go forward just a little bit more. You're just going a little bit more, enough to allow the head to go in front of the hand area. And then when it comes back to that sitting position between the sujood, you're sitting as normal, then you do it again, and then you stand up. Very, very important, one point. You must be able to distinguish between the ruku' and sujood. I can't emphasize this enough. Do not make the ruku' feel like a sujood. Don't make the sujood feel like a ruku'. You should feel a bit of extra strain when you do that sujood, and it should be very distinct. It should be very clear, the difference between the two. Very good. So you have the sitting position. What if you can't sit for prayer? What if you can't sit for the salah? So what do you do at this point? What do you do at this point? Third option. Third option is to lie down and pray. Lie down and pray. Again, now how do you do this? Lying down for prayer, some ulama have some... There's a difference of opinion regarding how this should be done. Some of the ulama mention that when you lie down for the salah, of course, try if you can to keep your head facing the qibla. Try to do that. Try not to allow your feet to get towards the qibla, but at least your head. And by the way, if a person does have their feet towards the qibla, it doesn't nullify the prayer, but it's just a bad etiquette of the salah. Some cultures, you know what they do? They're really big on when you set up your bedroom, that you don't sleep and your feet is towards the qibla. Some cultures are really, really big on that stuff. Again, this is an etiquette. You should try to not do that. But if you do, Allah Azza wa Jal is not going to punish you. You are not sinful and need to make tawbah for this. But again, it's just part of the mannerisms. I remember, when I was in Medina, sometimes when you're sitting against one of the pillars in the haram, you'll be sitting there for 2-3 hours between each salah. So you're studying, you're just doing your work and you're studying. And sometimes you want to stretch your feet, so you kind of lean back on the pillar and you stretch your feet and it's towards the qibla area, right? There was this one man, mashallah. I don't know whether to say mashallah or subhanallah, one of those two, right? But anyhow, he used to come with his cane and he used to look for anybody who would stretch their feet out towards the qibla. And if he saw you, he didn't care how old or how young you were. If he saw that your feet were stretched out towards the qibla, he'd come with his cane, and what do you think he would do? Boom, one smack on your feet. And then he would tell you to move your feet back, this is bad, and obviously this is obviously extreme. There's no need to do that. There's no need to enforce this as a rule. But the point is that it's an etiquette and you should try to do it, inshaAllah, as best as you can. So we have those 3 stages. Now when you're lying down, how do you do ruku' and sujood? This, of course, you will use your head. So the way that you will use your head, obviously any movement that you can do with the head will count as a ruku' and a sujood. Even if you cannot turn to do the taslim, you can still do it with your eyes or as much as you can, and it counts as the taslim. لا يكلف الله نفسا إلا وسعها. Allah Azza wa Jal will not burden a soul more than it can bear. So try to make it easy for you as best as you can. Remember that the salah has to be something that is comfortable. Don't make salah a burden on you. Allah Azza wa Jal says about the munafiq in Surah Al-Baqarah that the salah وَاسْتَعِينُوا بِالصَّبْرِ وَالصَّلَاةِ, and ask Allah Azza wa Jal to help you through patience and the salah. وَإِنَّهَا لَكَبِيرَةٌ إِلَّا عَلَى الْخَاشِعِينَ. The salah, this word إِنَّهَا, the damir or the extension or the pronoun, is referring back to salah. Allah Azza wa Jal says that salah is kabira. It's a big burden, it's heavy, except for the person who is amongst the khashi'een, except for the person who has khushu'. Other than that, salah should never feel like a burden upon your soul or upon your body. So those are the three different levels when it comes to praying. Obviously, below lying down. Here, this is a very extreme situation, and you're required to at least think about it and pray with your heart. You notice that I'm not giving no option to exempt yourself from salah. There's no exemption from the salah itself. Nobody is allowed to say that because of my position, I'm not going to pray. Only one person is allowed to do this, and has done it already, which is the Prophet ﷺ. He excused the majnoon, the person who is غير عاقل, the person who is insane, the person who is not fluent, the person who is not sane. This is the only individual mentally is excused from the salah. The one who is sleeping until they wake up is excused from the salah. The one who forgets until they remember is excused from the salah. The Prophet ﷺ already categorizes. Other than that, you gotta pray. You gotta think about the salah. So imagine, brothers and sisters, the next time you go to like a hospital and you visit anybody, and they say, you know, Allah knows best, you know, I'm in this position right now, I just had a surgery on my back and this and that, I don't have to pray. No, this is not an excuse. If you gotta make tayammum, you make tayammum and you pray. If you need somebody to help you to make tayammum or to make wudu, then get somebody to help you, and then you still got to pray. If you can't face the qibla, you still have to pray. There is no excuse. Now imagine if it's gone to that extent. Imagine the people who willingly don't pray. Intentionally they don't pray. They have the ability to do that and they just simply don't do that. What do you say after Hayya ala salah, Hayya ala al-falah? In the adhan, La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. There is no power or authority except with Allah Azza wa Jal. So what does this tell us? It tells us that when you pray, this is an invitation from Allah Azza wa Jal to pray. I knew this was going to happen because unfortunately the brother who's operating the camera, I don't see him here. The sisters never got a chance to see the demonstration. So I will repeat it as soon as the brother comes in so that they will be able to do that. That's no problem, insha'Allah ta'ala. Actually, this is good. I needed one of these flyers anyways. Then we come to the actual standing position of the prayer, and this is what we will conclude with, insha'Allah. Now, you've come to the salah, and you're lining up for the prayer. How do you line up for a prayer? We've talked about this in our past discussions of how a salah should start off heel to heel, not toes to toes. So you've got like a Shaquille O'Neal figure beside you, bigger feet, and you're just a smaller guy, then you're not going to try to get into center of the, you're not going to do any of these silly things. What you're going to do is, you're going to stand heel to heel with that individual. Now here's the question. Do you touch heel to heel or not? Now I mentioned after the salah, min bab al-awla. In other words, the most preferred method of standing in salah is that you stand heel to heel and you touch heel to heel. That is the most preferred method. That is the best way to stand up for the salah. Why? Because majority of companions, they've done this. The Prophet ﷺ also said to stand al-ka'ab بِالْكَعَبِ. And he mentions that the ankle should be close and near to the ankle. So they should at least touch one another as best as possible. The dilemma with this is, what happens if you don't do that? Have you committed a sin? Have you done something wrong? Majority, as a matter of fact, it's an ijma' that a person is not sinful for doing that, except in one circumstance. That is, if they intentionally don't see that this is an important part of the salah. In other words, I just simply don't care. Who cares about getting close? I don't want nobody to touch my feet. That's my personal space, so don't get close to me. All of these issues, this is a completely different problem now. But the person, as a result, should try to get close together and should try to touch feet to feet as best as you can. However, I like to set rules with this. I like to set rules. And I'll tell you why. For a lot of people, they get very carried away with this concept of touching feet to feet. Their entire salah is a battle with the person beside them to stay feet to feet, touch feet to feet. Their whole salah is battling through this. And let me tell you what exactly I'm talking about. Sometimes you might notice somebody beside you, you're praying, and you might be a quarter or a 0.3 centimeter away from their feet. Just enough that there's a piece of hair can fit between you and that person's feet. You don't really feel the skin there, but you guys are close enough. Then all of a sudden you feel that feet get close to you. And it starts drilling into your feet. This here again, defeats the whole purpose of standing feet to feet. You're not supposed to stop the blood circulation of your brother beside you. You're not supposed to pound your feet beside him. You're not supposed to get to the point where this is the one thing you're busying yourself in the entire salah with. If the person beside you doesn't get close to you, alhamdulillah, don't worry about it. Don't make it a huge problem and a huge issue for the salah. If you can get close enough, by all means do your part. But remember, you're standing in front of Allah Azza wa Jal. Focus on the most important things, which is your khushu'. Focus on the salah. Focus on pouring your heart out to Allah Azza wa Jal. Listen to the Quran being recited. You know, the brother who led Salat al-Maghrib read for us Surah Nur. I haven't heard Surah Nur recited in salah in a very long time. It was very refreshing to hear the surah after so long. So you want to focus and pick out those moments in the salah that can really tap into your heart. And if you can perfect it by getting close to each other, then by all means. But if not, it's not the end of your salah. Our shabab have this problem. The teenagers, they have this problem more than anything else. Because they just feel like this is a moment where they can strut their shoulders and become like soldiers in the salah and get strong and close to each other. So, min bab al-awla, as I mentioned, get close to each other as best as you can. Now, when you stand feet to feet, it's not just the heel that's going to do this, it's the entire feet. So it should completely close the gap as much as possible. And this also is accomplished by the shoulders as well. When you stand, you want to make sure that your shoulder is actually touching the individual beside you. One of the miracles behind this is how we establish brotherhood and love for each other. You know, subhanAllah, just look at the way that we pray. We stand beside each other. I don't know this person here. I don't know this person. I've never seen them in my life. But here I am. I'm going to actually get close and touch that individual. SubhanAllah, our feet are going to touch each other. You know, it just shows you that how the salah, the purpose of it is to establish that kind of unification and rahmah for each other. Second point when it comes to the salah. The Prophet ﷺ discouraged an individual from praying in the same spot continuously. And the Prophet ﷺ uses the term, don't use the same spot like how the camel sits in its stable. What a camel will do whenever it goes into its area is that it'll always find its spot, its territory, its place, and it'll remain there, and it becomes that spot for that camel. So the Prophet ﷺ says, don't make the musalla area like this. So in other words, you'll find that maybe some people, they like the corners of the line. So they'll choose one corner there, and Fajr they'll be there. Dhuhr, they'll be in that corner. Asr, Maghrib, Isha, that's that one corner. And they're so dedicated to it that the line may have started from the center and it becomes incomplete, but he'll still stand over there and, he'll try to cover it up by trying to make it look like it's some khair, and he'll tell the brothers, tafaddal, tafaddal, he'll try to cover it up. But really the problem is with him. What you should do is when somebody tells you to do that tafaddal, you look at them and say, you tafaddal, come here. Get to the center of the line. Get with the jama'ah. There's no such thing as our own spots. As a matter of fact, I remember Sheikh Mukhtar, hafidhahullah, whenever he would have his classes in the haram, just before, he would always have it after Maghrib. Before Maghrib Salah, a lot of the students used to take those Quran holders, those wooden ones, where you place the Quran on it. They would take that and they would place it in the spots where they plan to sit, because they want to reserve their spots close to the Sheikh. The Sheikh, one time he came very early and he saw all of these little book holders all around his chair. And when he sat down, he started off, Bismillah, Alhamdulillah, and so on. And he says, Awwalan, first thing I want to say is that the students who do this is haram in our Sharia. I do not permit this in my dars. I do not permit this for anybody to do anything like this. So if you come and you see one, he even told us, he goes, if you come and you see one of these things here and you would like to sit there, remove it and sit there. So it's the same principle that you want, that we don't have our own personal spots that we dedicate ourselves to. The musalla is for all of us, and you want to make sure that you pray each and every single part of the masjid as much as you can. We're going to pause here, inshaAllah, just for today. Just before we conclude, I'm just going to repeat very briefly for the sisters the demonstration that I did, just so that they're able to see exactly how the prayer is prayed while sitting down. However, this is where we will pause inshaAllah until Friday, which we will continue. The next rukn, or the pillar that we're going to discuss when it comes to the salah, is we're going to talk about the takbiratul ihram, so the Allahu Akbar in the beginning. And we're also going to include with that the taslim. And then we're going to talk about the ruku'. We're going to talk about the standing between the ruku' and the sujood. And then inshaAllah the sujood itself, we will leave that as a complete separate discussion. We're going to look at some of the mistakes of the ruku'. We're going to look at some of the people when they get out of the ruku', they look up into the sky and they say, Rabbana wa lakal hamd. And all of these different things. And we're going to talk about the individual that looks around, all of these things and how they affect the salah. Is this permissible or not? Brothers and sisters, very, very crucial, very, very practical. Remember, salah, we do it so often, we have to constantly refresh ourselves and continue to perfect it. This here is also a lesson for myself. I'm also perfecting my own prayer as I go through it with you. So we ask Allah Azza wa Jal to give us the ikhlas and the sincerity and the strength in order that we can perfect our prayers, in order that we can have sincerity in our salah. And we ask Allah Azza wa Jal to make us cry in our prayers, to soften our hearts in our du'as. And most importantly, we ask Allah Azza wa Jal to accept these efforts from us. Wa akhiru da'wana and alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. I don't want you to record this, okay? But the sisters can still see, right? Yeah, if you stop the recording, they can still see me at the back. Yeah, that's all. I just want them to see it, okay? Okay. Because there's no point of recording the same thing twice, right? Okay, where's my salah buddy? Where are you? Come on. Okay, so we're going to do the same thing, okay?